Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's not Wednesday, but we have a Transformation Monday today, and we will also have one on Wednesday. So here we are, like Claudia said to her group today earlier in her community, Growing with CI. She said, we just had to double up because, once we go back to work, God knows that we're going to be able to double up in a week. So here we are. We are here to bring you a topic that you asked for. And I know it's a topic that everyone has questions about for the most part. And we are really ready to talk to you about how to make online translators a thing of the past in your class. And we're going to have a very honest discussion, and we're going to share from our experiences and Claudia's experiences and some of the best practices and how to handle that in the classroom so that you don't see that reoccurring anymore. So I want to say hello to everybody who's joining us. We have Dee again, Ana Marie, Ursula, welcome, Carolina, welcome, and some other names I can't really see at the moment. But I want to introduce myself because I know we have a lot of people who are new every week, and I always like to take a time to introduce myself. And then I'll let Claudia introduce herself. So my name is Bertha Delgadillo, and I teach Spanish. High school Spanish. I teach levels 2, 3, and AP Spanish in my high school. I've been teaching Spanish for 7 years. I love to teach Spanish with comprehensible input. That's just messages that my students can understand. And also, I love to use a proficiency-driven mindset with my classroom so that they can become lifelong learners of the language. And I absolutely love to share, learn, grow, because this teaching gig, the growth never stops. So I am so glad that we have this space, and also Claudia's space, Growing with CI, which I want to invite you to join if you're not part of her community, where we can all just grow together through this session, through these conversations. And even today, even though, Claudia and I put together this presentation for you, I know Claudia and I are going to be learning so much from this conversation. So I'm going to let Claudia introduce herself. And she is a great friend of mine. We become really, really great friends. And we work in many projects together this summer. It's been incredible. And so Claudia.
Thank you, Bertha. I love this. I'm going to miss this. I'm excited to go back to the classroom, but I'm going to miss just being so much with you, with working with Bertha, with all of you in this community and in my community, Growing with CI. So my name is Claudia Elliott. I am a Spanish teacher. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I have been teaching since 2005. And in the last 6 years, my practice have transformed just to be really reflecting what second language acquisition research says, that our students learn with comprehensible input. I love how my classes have transformed. I think that's why I'm here. The reason that I'm here is because I know being a teacher is such a hard work, and we know and we hear a lot of guidelines and a lot of expectations for us as a teachers. Keep your class in the target language 90% of the time. Have high expectations. Bring critical thinking. Assess. Track data. I mean, all these one on top of each other. And I was always like, what? How? I mean, like, how? So I know, right? Like, I'm just having so many hats, be mindful with the student, but also, all these things, differentiate, cover them all, reach them all. And all that just sounded so difficult for me. But when I started learning and reading, and I saw it happening in my class, and I said, oh my gosh, I want to share. And I was so fortunate to be able to have somebody to tell me, open a Facebook group. And I did. And then I had just gratitude to meet my friend Bertha and my friend Lisa and my friend Cristina. And they have become such a force in my career, not only to stay strong in my classroom with my students, but also to show up here and share with you. And I am so thankful. Bertha, thank you so much for inviting me to your community, because I know this community means tons for you. And I'm so thankful because every single session that I have been doing during the summer has meant so much to me. I have grown tons. by just having this conversation, by thinking, by repeating, by just reflecting, by listening to your questions, by reading to your comments. So thank you for this amazing opportunity.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Claudia. I'm just like, I'm reading all the comments and I'm going to cry. And I'm going to cry for what you're saying and reading all the comments. And I'm just like, wow. But yes, I mean, we are super passionate to bring you professional learning. And we understand you can't be here every Wednesday or every Monday or in Claudia's group every Sunday. We understand that. But the reason why we want to bring it and make it happen, and we are committed to that, it's because if we can save you the headache of 3 years it might have taken us to figure out something with just one training, our job is done. And I'm just so grateful to have that opportunity.
Yes. And especially when we are like, I do have 35 students in my class. I teach in a public school. I have 3 preps. So I feel like, you know, sometimes when I had these trainings weren't done by world language teachers, and sometimes they just didn't speak to my own reality. And I just felt like I wasn't heard, right? Like they wanted me to do all these things, but like, have you been in a world language class?
Exactly.
Like, have you felt my pain? Have you done this? Have you had the student who refused to use?
It's just so much more valuable, you know. It's like if my husband brings me, he knows I love sweets, you know. So he brings me any cake, I'm gonna be like, okay, thank you, honey. But if he brings me the right cake, oh my God, I'm just gonna be like, okay, what can I do for you? So that's just how it is with PD. You know, you want to have the PD that's relevant to your content because you're gonna enjoy it that much more. So with that being said, we want to ask you to stay with us until the end because we have a surprise for you, and that is, you know, if you were not in our previous session today, if you were in a previous session, you already know of the surprise. However, don't spoil it. And you have double the opportunity to win. So here we go. So yes, please stay with us until the end for a surprise.
Oh, sorry, I just forgot that I had to do this.
Okay, so today we're gonna be talking about online translators. And we're gonna be addressing 3 main things that Claudia and I just thought about. And they're just so real to understand why our students use online translators irresponsibly inside the classroom. Number 1, why do they use them? And I know you know some of the answers to that. And if you want to go ahead and type them in the chat box, why do you think students use online translators in the class? Or, you know, while we were doing virtual learning, why do you think they use them? The second thing we're going to be discussing today are going to be strategies to encourage risk-taking with acquired language and scaffolds. Because one way we can minimize that is scaffolds. It's using scaffolds in the language classroom. And then the third point that we're going to be discussing today is when the students do use them in the classroom, because Claudia and I are not coming here telling you that we have 0 students use the translators. That's not it. Okay, we do have them use them, but it doesn't happen like it used to. And when we find that a student used it, we address it and it doesn't happen again. So it rarely happens in our classes. So what should we do when students use online translators irresponsibly? So we have some answers to address the first question. Why do students use online translators? Okay,
I love Jess' answer. Fast, easy, and they think they'll get a good grade. Yeah, I mean, like, yes. I mean, like, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? I mean, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was a pretty good student, but, you know, fast and easy was something really appealing. You're right. I mean, how many of you wanted to, like, I don't know, get in shape, and you want to sign up for that fast, easy magic pill that you can, like, get in shape in like 24 hours or lose some weight and like, okay, 24-hour diet. We love fast and easy. And I don't think it's a generation problem. I think we all have that tendency, but the access, right? The access that our students have today is bigger than what I had when I was in school.
Okay, we have another great one that I like right here, because what we ask them to do is too difficult and they don't have the language to express their ideas.
I love that.
I love this one too. Yes.
Yes.
We have, the fast and easy. They don't know how to complete the works. The assignments is above what they know. Okay. So let's think about the reasons that we are highlighting. And is it really their responsibility, or is it our responsibility as teachers?
Yeah. I love to read this because I think I see so many answers that I totally agree. I mean, and look at our hours. So I think we are right where, I mean, like, it's just exactly like you said. The text is incomprehensible, right? I was in our previous Facebook Live session talking about using authentic resources, and I shared with Bertha, and Bertha laughed so hard when I told Bertha my I'm going to tell you, unsuccessful attempt to use an entire article of El País, with a very famous newspaper in Spain, with my class. So I am sure that the text was so incomprehensible, above the level, and if you are assigning a big grade to that text, the chances is that they can, they will.
Yep. Yeah, because they don't want to fail. We know, even though we know that students are driven by grades, and there are things we can do to help them get away from that mentality, and lead them to be led by growth in the language. And we actually had a session in this group over a month ago on that topic. But so the text is not, when the text is not comprehensible, and like Claudia mentioned, there's a big grade assigned to that assignment, that task, they're going to do it because they don't want to fail. They don't want to fail. Well, at least my students don't want to fail. So they will definitely try to do it. The second one is the task is above their proficiency level. They don't know where to start, which I know many people already type something along those lines. They feel they need to be perfect. Yes, we also had some comments that were referring to that. Some of our students, even our high achieving students, because I know that one of my good friends showed me a really funny and inappropriate translation, and the child was not trying to be inappropriate at all, but he used Google Translate, obviously, and Google Translate gave him a really inappropriate. And when we talked to the child about it, and we actually told him what his Google translated text meant, he was all red and he did not know what to do with himself. But yes, they need to be perfect. So sometimes even the high achieving students will use it if they feel super stressed and that they can't produce the language we're asking them to do. And then also, like Claudia mentioned, online translators are free, easy to use, and accessible.
Yeah.
So that has to do with the students. Do they want to learn the language? Are they invested in our course? And that has a lot to do with us as well.
Yes. And Mariela is writing here. Sometimes they don't want to spend the time. Yes, that is true. I think, of course, it is true. Like Bertha mentioned, it's not like, okay, let's do these strategies and you will never ever see a student using an online translator. That's not going to happen, because there are going to be some students that, regardless of how much work you put to make a text comprehensible, to design a task that is totally doable for the student with the appropriate support, they're going to end up working harder and go an online translator, because sometimes it's harder to do it. But if they choose to do, we will have those. So yes, I hear you, that happens too. But what we want to share with you is some strategies where it's not going to be a huge problem in your class. It's not going to be, oh my gosh, everybody's using a translator. I am so tired of reading this that I know is online translator. It's just like when you
I mean, and what does that do to your grading? I mean, let's think about it. If you invested a lot of time on a unit or on a lesson, and you created sometimes tiered assessments or several choices of assessments, and then they turn in something that like you start reading the first 5 and 3 of those are Google Translate. It's kind of like I want to quit my job, like seriously.
Yeah,
That kind of feeling. I know because I was there.
Yeah, yes, it's super frustrating. So what we hope is that first, I mean, like we know, and I talked to Bertha about that. There are things that we can control as teachers. There are things that we cannot control as teachers. So I want to just focus on what I can control. And then I have to deal what I cannot control when that comes to me. So
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to focus on how can I help? How can I have the majority of my students to be able to use their language in my class, being authentic. And when I'm saying authentic, it's like their own language, using their own language in my class. How can I promote that? How can I make them empowered so the use of online translators reduce?
And I think we could go as far as addressing our audience tonight and tell them, to think a little bit, reflect a little bit before we actually give you the answers or part of our answers, because we don't have all of the answers but we do have some pretty good answers tonight. However, if you look at these reasons right now that we just addressed, think about it. Which one of these reasons do you have some control of? Which ones of these reasons are you able to kind of maybe influence for the student to not use it?
Mm-hmm.
And go from there. So I think that's another important way. So if the student feels it needs to be perfect, so that means we need to be working with the students' attitude to what is expected from our classes.
Yeah, I love Jeff's comments. I mean, like, I'm just having so much fun with Jeff. Jeff says, I tell all the time, I want to see mistakes I expect and not to be plus one perfecto.
Oh my goodness, Jeff.
Yes,
yep. Absolutely.
Yes. So, and I love Bertha's point about like, let's look about what are the points that we can control as the leaders in our classrooms, as the guides in our classroom, as the coaches in our classroom, to like really diminish the use of online translators. And after that, there is going to be a portion that, we cannot control. So let's not put all our energy on that, because then it's just kind of like beyond ourselves. Like it's just something that I cannot do that. Yeah. So Carolina is saying 1, 2, 3. Then we have 1, 2, and then we have 2, 3. Maricela said making the text comprehensible. The first 2, 1 and 2.
Actionable. I love that.
Absolutely. 1, 2, 3. Yes, exactly. I mean, online translators are not going to leave, right?
And then before we move further too, let's address this. Let's be honest. I am a native speaker of the language, but really I think more of myself as a heritage speaker because I arrived here at the age of 11. So I had a good language background, but not as good as Claudia's, because Claudia arrived to the U.S. at what age, Claudia?
30.
Okay, so Claudia's Spanish is going to be a lot stronger than mine. Mine is still pretty good, but even though I am a native speaker, I like to think of myself more like a heritage speaker. So when we're using, I asked Claudia, has very strong Spanish, and I have very strong Spanish, and we both always, when we're working together, and even when we're not working together, we always have to resource to like Lingui or Word Reference or any of those online translators ourselves as teachers to find the right term either in Spanish or in English for webinars, because we might not have the word. So the translators do have a place in the classroom, but we do have to teach our students how to use them responsibly. And I guess it goes with a whole lesson about that. How to use them responsibly and when it's okay to use them, as opposed to like when should you not use them.
Yeah. And I do, number 3 is really close to my heart because English is my second language. And for many, many years, and I think until lately, I felt really conscious about my English. I just noticed so many errors, and I still do make a lot of errors in my English. And when I write it, like sometimes when I write my instructions in English to my students, they can see and they notice the errors. And, I went to law school. I had masters in United States. So like I had my good part of education here in the States, but still made tons of errors. So I put myself as the perfect example. I don't expect you to be perfect. You have been learning the language for 6 months. I have been learning English all my life. And look at me, hear me, see me words. So I think when I told them about it, and sometimes I say, how do you say this? How do you spell this? And I have to type it in my phone for, you know, some words in English to help me with some instructions for them. Or when we're doing like, you know, like drills. And I'm like, how do you say the drill is that is what is 1 L or 2 L's? And they help me out. So we don't need to be perfect. I mean, language cannot be perfect.
Same for me. I make mistakes in both English and Spanish all the time.
Yeah.
And you know what? It is okay.
It is okay. And
if you're, and you know, I invite you to correct me. If you're gonna correct me with love, please. And that's the same way I want to correct my students, with love.
Yeah, that correction part can be hurtful. Okay, so let's start. We talk about this. I love this conversation. I love these comments. I mean, I don't know if we really needed to have this conversation because I see a lot of, you know.
People already came to their own conclusions.
I know. Okay, so we are going to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Strategies to promote risk-taking when outputting language. So when we want our students to create language, when we ask them to do a quick write or a time write, or we ask them to do anything like that, we have to make sure that they're feeling safe taking risk with the language. If they're not feeling safe taking risk with the language, guess what they're going to do? They're going to open their little device and they're going to go to whatever translator of their choice works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And even with reading, because do you know, I'm sure you know, there is an app that the students hold and they scan the reading and it translates the reading for them. And if they are not even reading, you know there is no acquisition happening, even though you make the text comprehensible. That's why we want to make sure we make those texts very comprehensible for our students, because when the students feel that they can do it, they will do it.
Yes. Yes, totally. So these are our strategies. The first one is, like Bertha mentioned, stay comprehensible. This is like a big one. Like, I feel like when I became totally intentional to stay comprehensible in my classes, no matter how hard it was, no matter how slow I felt like I was going, no matter how repetitive it sounded to me, right? I saw a huge change in my students. In terms of cheating, plagiarism, using online translator, and connection with the class. So staying comprehensible. And now notice this, when you stay comprehensible, when you provide the input to your student, empowers them to feel they can output, even though they can't yet, or maybe they're not ready because they don't own the language. When you understand, and that happens to me, you know, when I understand something in English, I feel, oh, I can say that because I understood that. So it's just very powerful when you stay comprehensible. Not only you are limiting the use of translator for reading when they read, but also you are empowering them to take the risk to output the language.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that statement, Claudia. So we also want to make sure we talk to our students about proficiency and what it means to go up the levels of the performance descriptors, what it means to be performing at the novice high level and what it needs to be performing at an intermediate low level, so that the students, because especially when we're talking about high school students and even 7th and 8th graders can understand this concept, their mind will shift into, okay, I want to grow and I want to go into the next level, as opposed to just staying in the same place. And really, it helps with goal setting. It motivates them. And we know that motivation is key to engagement in any classroom. Doesn't matter if it's world languages, math, whatever, you know, motivation, student motivation is key. And I honestly have found that through talking to my students about proficiency, because they, like we mentioned in Claudia's group, our students might be novice learners, might be novice high learners of the language, but they're not novice thinkers. They understand higher concepts. So we talk to our students about how they are going to be learning the language. And we talk to them what it is they need to move up to the next level, and say, hey, you know, in order for you to be at the intermediate low level or intermediate mid level, you need to be, please integrate more transition words. Oh, where the heck are the transition words? Okay, yeah, you can find them on my wall over here, or you can find them in the document that I gave you. Or maybe in the presentational writing task, you're going to have a couple of transition words, and you're going to say, try to integrate these in your writing. And they're doing so consciously, and their writing looks just a lot more beautiful because they know what it is they need to do to score at the next level. And because they know what to do, and they understand the language, and they have the support they need, and they have a goal, which is not to get a 90, but to move from novice high to intermediate low, they are more than likely to take those risks with the language.
And when we're talking about proficiency, we're talking about also rubrics. And I want to share this because I teach AP and I teach IB. And of course, the writing part in AP is huge, right? They have to do the email and they have to do the persuasive essay. And then for my IB class, they have to do the paper one, which is a type of text that they need to write. And they have minimum words that they have to write. And it's elaborated, right? And when they see the task, they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do it. But what I always start is with the criteria, with the rubric, because when you read the rubric, and 3 is a passing for AP, and when you read a 3 in AP, it says, and I'm reading because that's why I stood up to have it, is generally understandable. So you're going to understand it generally. So there are going to be some sections that you're not going to even to understand. And then it says, with errors that may impede comprehensibility. With errors that may impede comprehensibility. That's a 3. And then in 4, it says, okay, so errors, some errors do not impede comprehensibility. So it has some errors, but I understand what they're saying. That's a 4. So when I bring this to my AP class, I see this is what it is. I mean, like, you don't have to be error-free. You don't have to write all this information in an online translator, because this is what is expected from you, because you only have been here for 4 years. So it's not going to be magic. You are not going to be writing essays, and you're not going to become a writer in 4 years. So I think talking about proficiency and really tackling your rubrics, it is extremely important. So the students have realistic expectations.
And since you mentioned that, Claudia, I mean, it brings me back a beautiful memory I have with my students before the school closure. And I always talk about this one student because, you know, she came into my classroom just, you know, not having it. She was not going to have Spanish 2, and she was not going to let me have Spanish 2. She was not going to let me teach Spanish 2. So you can imagine what kind of scenario it started in my class. And I took certain actions that easily, you know, it didn't escalate to anything badly. I honor her personality and the way she handled herself. She's a very unique child. But I remember that in one reading that I had given the class, she was kind of like, I could tell that she was trying for me, because at this point we had a really good relationship. And I know she was trying for me. And even though she cared for me as her teacher, and I knew she would try for me, it was a little bit too hard for her. So what I had to do, I had to sit next to her and walk her through that activity. And literally, because all my other students were fine. All my other students were on task and they were working hard to complete the activity. But I knew she needed that extra attention. So I sat next to her and I literally asked her to read for me in Spanish and tell me, you know, every so often I would stop and I would have her tell me what she thought, what was her interpretation of the paragraph or 2-3 sentences. And she was able to do it. And every time she was able to do it, I would just, you know, like praise the heck out of her effort. And when she got stuck, you know, I didn't be like, oh, you should know this, you know, because that's what I used to do, Claudia. I don't know about you. Or just look at them like, what are you doing in Spanish 3? And you do not know how to conjugate, or you do not know how to, you know, I mean, that's what I used to do like early in my teaching career, because I just, you know, when you don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know.
And you know, it's like being parents. I don't know if you are a parent. I'm a parent of 2 voice, and I'm just hoping that I'm not going to create a permanent damage. You know, we get better, and we always kind of like mess up with the first one, and we get better with the second one, and then I stop. But it is like we need to have grace. We just really need to be able to grow. So we're gonna come back because we forgot that we were more specific. So when we're talking about stay comprehensible, how can we stay comprehensible? 3D, no, yeah, 3 times a charm. Yeah. Okay, so you add visuals to your text. Using frequent vocab and introduce few words at a time is super important. I love to start my novice class with the 7 superverbs, and then I start tackling the sweet 16, and then everything grows from there. Establish meaning of a non-vocab words is so important. Like as Bertha said, in my past years, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I kind of got upset, especially with my level 3, my level 2, and my AP Spanish, when they didn't know a word that it was super obvious for me. Like in my view, that was a word that they should have known. And instead of just saying what it meant, I just got this view like, you don't know that? How in the world? I mean, like horrible. And it was just something that I don't know. I just did it. And I apologize because I just shamed them for not knowing a word that I thought that they were supposed to know. So now I just say it, right? I just don't make a big deal. I just establish meaning. And then I go slow and less is more. So those are a couple of tips that we have for you to stay comprehensible. This is an example that I show also in the Facebook Live that we did. And when you are in the upper levels, when you are in the intermediate levels, when you want to start bringing those authentic resources, I always make sure that I keep them comprehensible. How I make them comprehensible? I have words that I know that are key for the students to know in order to understand the text, and I just translate them. And if they are concrete words, I usually have illustrations, and I bold them, and I kind of enhance the text so it is just more evident for them, and I repeat them and I circle them. So again, it's just staying comprehensible, so it's not frustrating for a student, and again, just lowering that temptation to get it fast because they couldn't do it. Now we're talking about proficiency, and this is what Bertha was talking about.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Claudia.
So this is what we were talking about, how important it is to say, and that's when I was talking about the AP rubric, and like, okay, let's see. And I want to bring this together with this. This is from the Ohio Department of Education, and you can scan that. And these are like a great research that they did, talking about how proficient your students are going to be depending on the hours that is spent in your class. And I think this is very important for our students to know, and of course for us to know, because as Meredith said it in the at the beginning of this session, and I know a lot of you said, is sometimes our expectations are not realistic. Sometimes we may ask our students to do things that they're not ready for. The perfect example was me trying to have my students to read an article from El País and pretend that they do understand. Dee was mentioning, I don't know if in this session or in the other session, she said that when she bring like an authentic audio and they say, okay, what did you learn from that? Maybe they're not ready for that. So having that conversation with your students, and for us as teachers to truly understand this, is paramount. This is a big one, right? Each learner is different, and when we provide our input, we need to really cast that net. We have been talking with Bertha about casting that net where you can cover all of them. And I know that seems, well, I'm sorry about that, one of the unrealistic things, but when you're intentional, you can do that. Okay, so let's talk about our last one for scaffolds. Don't you love this image, Bertha?
Absolutely. Yep. It definitely breaks it down really easily for us to understand.
This is a great image because comprehensions precedes production by a mile. That is so true. So when we are designing the task for our students to complete in the class, we really need to think, what are they ready to produce? The fact that they understand something doesn't mean that they can produce it yet. They don't own the language yet. And we need to be mindful. We need to keep that in mind when we're asking our students to produce, to output. And the more you think about it, the more scaffolds you provide to your students, you are going to see a great thing. I mean, was like an aha moment for me. And it was the first time that I decided to create a scaffold document with the intention for my students to use. We give them all those sentence starters, all those sentence frames, that essential vocab that it was going to allow them to create some vocab. I noticed this. I noticed that some of my students were super dependent on that document, and some of my students glanced them and kept on going. Wow. That was the perfect example of how we can differentiate in our class without creating 5 different lessons. So let me show you a couple that I have created for my classes. So this is for my level 1, where my students are describing. They describe themselves, and I give them this. This is level 1. I mean, they are novice mid. This is like maybe at the end of the first semester. Some of them maybe had a previous experience with Spanish, and they may be just a little strong novice mid. They cannot create much, but they want to say something about themselves. They want to describe themselves, and I want them to play with the language. Why not? But I'm not going to ask them to do that by themselves. I'm going to provide tons of sentence starters, sentence frames to help them describe themselves, describe their best friend, describe their mom, describe their dad, describe people that are important to that.
And it's like how we have talked about it in the past, Claudia, that we can't just expect all the students to start just because we delivered a lot of input, and maybe we really taught our hearts out with the input we delivered to our students, and we did it in so many ways, and we know they got so many repetitions. It is still important to give them the support that they need, because sometimes one student might be that they need that little gentle push to get them started. Sometimes for writing, I mean, you and I write emails to our people, and you know, it's hard to get started on that train of thought at the beginning. How do I start? But once I start, or when I'm writing a blog, it's like, I know what I'm going to say, but I don't know how should I start it. So sometimes those sentence starters are gold.
They are, because that is your first question, right? I mean, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Every time that you ask your students to say, okay, so let's write a letter or let's write a paragraph, you're going to have tons of students raise their hand like, how do I start? They don't know. And I don't know sometimes. And it's better. Every time that I write an email, you know, English is just, it's hard for me to write, right? So when I start, like, how do I start? How do I go? And sometimes, you know what I do? When it's like, for example, a letter of recommendation for one of my students, I Google letter of recommendations formats because I want a model text. I want a model text that is going to tell me what information you need to include, how you're going to structure that. And I look at it and then I create my own. So when you do that for your students, wow, you really reduce the need for them to use an online translator.
Absolutely.
This is another one that I do for my intermediate learners. I teach IB, and one section of the IB, the oral IB for the standard level, it is based on description of images. That's how they start the conversation. And then they have to describe, they have to connect, they have to compare, and they have to contrast. So what I did for them is to create this scaffolding where they start. And again, some of my students were really dependent on this. And then some kind of look glance them, help them organize the ideas, right? Like that structure, like where do you start? Do I start describing this, or do I start talking about my opinion? Like, what should I do? So this was a very successful resource that I created for my intermediate learners that really helped them to describe an image and to be able to level up their language.
And that's what we want to make sure we lead them to start easily and also to move up to the next level. Because as we mentioned, and pardon the redundancy, but it is so true, when the student feels capable, when even if it's because we have given them a scaffold and they don't see it that way, they just feel like, oh man, I am creating. Actually, Spanish might be for me after all. French might be something I can do. Because many times, I mean, they already have in their head that it takes forever to learn a language. And, you know, we think like, oh, you know, when I'm fluent, but in the process is beautiful. So, and they learn to appreciate that process little by little. So
and they feel so proud.
And they do.
They do feel so proud. Okay. So there's this is Megan Buck, and I know that Megan was here in this community, and her work is amazing. So also, when you want to level up our students, right? You want to support the students, but you want to level them up. You want to be mindful and really intentional on how can I have my student when he's ready to level up. And she created this impact cloud that I love, where she really kind of walks the student to elaboration, and she's providing the preposition because that abstract words are super hard and they're super common, but they're really hard, like with, without, in, on, those little words. So she's providing those words and she is putting them in color so students can own their own journey and they can highlight when they kind of hitting those elements. So this is a great way to really level up and promote. So when we bring all these elements together, it's like, how many students are not going to get all this help, all this support, and do it? And do it instead of going crazy in an online translator to say things that they really don't know what they mean. And this is what we can control. This is something that we all can control. And by the way, Megan Buck's website is performanceproficiencypossibilities.com, and she has tons of free resources there. So check her out. She is amazing. Okay, so we have stay comprehensible, scaffold and support the output, and we have 2 or 3. No. Personalize the language. I think we're missing one.
I think so too. But that goes back to making sure that we get to know our students when we deliver the language to them.
Yes, and this is a great one. And I know if you were in my community, my Facebook community is growing with CI. And several weeks ago, Tan Hyung was in my community. He teaches English as a second language, and he does incredible work in social emotional learning and in ELLS. And he has this amazing blog and podcast that is Empowering ELLS. And I have found it super motivating for me. And he says, in one of the episodes, Doctora Mariana Castro came and she said, we cannot ask our students to leave who they are at the door. Let's amplify their language. Wow. This is, for me, super powerful because, again, and we go back to what Bertha was talking about, Meredith White, a phrase when we talk about they may be novice language learners in our class, but they bring tons. They bring a lot of asset in our classroom. They bring experiences, they bring interest, they bring talents, they bring linguistic skills in their native language. So we really need to tap on that so that so we're giving them a reason to use the output. And we're giving them an authentic reason to use the output. When we're asking them to give an opinion about something that is close to their heart, that is related to an experience, to an talent, to an interest. So we need to really bring those experiences, get to know your students, have them talk about the things that they are related to them.
And we already had a presentation on that inside this community. So if you're new to this community, I'm going to drop a link in a minute that will give you access to all of the past presentations we have done inside this community. And you will get access to all the videos. If you click on the images and the document, and you will get access to all the PDFs. And as this one as well will be put in there. So because we had some people asking about this presentation, so you will definitely get access to this presentation and the PDF. I probably won't be able to have it until maybe before midnight tonight, but it will be there. So that's kind of I wanted to like answer, because some people were asking about the presentation, Claudia.
Yes, this is like a very, and I think this point has been brought up in this community, in my community, so many times. It is the importance of us to see our students and let them know that they have been seen. So when you select images, music, and videos that relates to them, they are gonna more likely to be willing to output with their own voice instead of using an online translator. When they are part of the output by bringing their pictures or maybe quoting something that they said in some of their work. When you take a picture of a really good sentence that they put in a word that they did, and you highlight that sentence in front of the class, wow. I mean, like, of course, you're not going to highlight an online translator sentence, right? Because what is the effort of that? But when they know that you do that on a regular basis, when they know that you bring up what they have to say, what they have to write, and when you really tap on those interests and those students, you will see that the use of online translator is going to be a thing of the past for most of your class. Again, there are going to be some kids.
There's some that will try, especially at the beginning when they're new to you. I mean, that's when it normally happens to me, Claudia, when they're brand new to me at the beginning of the class. And even though I made everything comprehensible and I gave them scaffolds, some of them might want the easy way out, or some of them are still trying to reconcile with learning, Spanish. At the beginning, they don't know me yet. We don't have a strong relationship yet. But we're going to talk about what it is that we do when that does happen, rarely, so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Now, one more thing that I feel it is really important for you guys, for us to understand, is the power of choice. Some students express themselves in different ways and they have different talents. So when we give them choice how to output and have them to do maybe a video or maybe create a presentation or maybe type it or maybe write it, then it really empowers them and allows them to want to produce and take the risk. Because we need to know, we need to understand, like we have said here several times, it is a risk. It is a risk when you're writing, when your grade is on the table and you are I'm not talking about the lazy student who doesn't want to do anything, who wants to be under, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the student who is struggling maybe school, who has a good heart, who's trying, but man, this is hard. And then he has that easy Google Translator. And then you. So when you give them all these tools, it really diminishes the possibility.
And that's what you have control of as an instructor.
So let's talk about what to do when our students use online translators, because they will.
Yep. So these are some practices that we have learned over the years that have worked when addressing this issue when it does happen, because no matter how wonderful of a teacher you are, it will happen. and it will happen at least once or twice. But if you do these things, it will almost become non-existent over time, because they know that they can't do it. So the first thing that we need to do is make sure that we address the situation with celerity and certainty. That means do not, you might be so tired because you have 120 papers and you're grading over the papers, and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to, address this with this child, because you're so tired. It happens. We're human as teachers. But you must address it with a child. You must. Do not let it go, because if you let it go once, it's going to happen again. And if you let it go once with, Michaela, and then Joanna and Michaela are friends, and then you get Joanna is going to be hating on you because you did not get Michaela, but you got Joanna. So you have to be super, like, always on it. So if it happens, doesn't matter which kid did it, you have to address it, but remember to address it with celerity and certainty. Claudia, I'm sure you have something to add.
That is something that John Howard said. And when he said that, and I know Bertha took his class on classroom management, and I got his book. And one of the things that he said is that celerity and certainty versus severity. So that is exactly what we need to do. Celerity is we cannot wait a month, right? We cannot wait a month. We need to address the situation immediately. And I know it is a very uncomfortable discussion. And sometimes, especially when you have a relationship with a student that is not really strong, it's even harder. And when you have a parent that is difficult, oh my gosh, you make it even worse. But if we don't do that, it will happen more and more and more.
And you know what? The word will also get out. It could go out for good or for bad, because the word will get out like, oh, you know what? She might not. And, something else that's classroom management related is that if you do not, if you only do it, if you address it inconsistently, meaning that sometimes you address it and sometimes you don't, a child knows that you might or you may not catch them, so they're going to be willing to take the chance.
It's like speeding. It's like speeding.
Yep, just like that.
That would happen, right? So what are the chances? You know that you may get, just don't get the ticket, and it's highly probable that you don't get the ticket. So you take the chance. Now, when you get the ticket, it's a high ticket, right? It's severity. It's really severe, but it's not always happening, and it doesn't happen immediately. So you take the chance. That happens. We are humans, and they know. I mean, they know.
And it goes back to saying that if you address it constantly, the students will say, oh, you know what, Señora Elliott, she will know you did not do that. You better don't turn that in like that. You better go fix it, or you go ask for an extension or something, because Señora Elliott, she's not going to put up with that. And, if you do the other way, the word's going to get out the same way, and they're going to be like, oh, she won't know. She won't find out. It's okay. It's not a big deal. So I'm not even going to invest in it. And when children understand that they don't need to pay attention in your class, and, they can still get by with Google Translate, they're not going to pay attention in class either. So you're going to have some engagement problems there. You're going to have students who might not come to your class virtually because they're like, oh, I can just do it online. So that's just another, word of advice as far as addressing the situation consistently with celerity and certainty. So the second, go ahead, Claudia.
No, I was going to go with the second one, but you can start.
The second thing we want to do is want to make sure we use a positive language. And that is so important. Remember how I said earlier, if you're going to correct my English, please do so with love. And that's why I said I'm going to be the same way with my students when I'm correcting their language. So use positive language, and obviously it's going to be hard to address it with love after the child just did totally academic dishonesty, and on top of that, it might not even be your favorite student, which don't tell me you don't have favorites, because I try not to, but I do have some students who are, I love them all the same, but you know what students I'm talking about. The good ones that will always shine no matter what, but still, the point is that with all students, we want to address, if it happens, it doesn't matter if it's the student that, we are always expecting like their best work, because that's just what they do all the time. or it doesn't matter if it's the one student who barely comes up to class. We want to use positive language when we put a light on this infraction or so per se. And we want to make sure that we address it positively so that the student is receptive to the message and they just don't shut down and become like forget Spanish class.
Yeah.
Because if you don't address it positively, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah. And when we came back from the pandemic, oh, Diane is saying celerity. Am I the only one who had to look it up? Diane, that is a word that I do know because I guess I was a lawyer, and celerity is one of the principles to apply justice. So I was like, yeah, that's something that, anyways. But one of the things that I did when we came back from the pandemic was I was really stressed the first 2 weeks when all my students start writing to tell me why they were not doing their work, like why they were not submitting the work, why they didn't show up for the live session, why. And at the beginning, I was pretty defensive. Like I was pretty like, you know what? I mean, like really, I gave you 3 days and you cannot turn it in 3 days. Really, I'm being so flexible with you. Really. And they were telling me about like, my internet is not working, or I have to share my computer with a friend, or, with a sister, or I had to go to the doctor, or I had to, all these reasons that they have so they didn't complete their work. And I was just really getting upset, like really upset at them. And then one day I stopped and I said, I'm going to make a choice. And this is my personal choice. I'm going to believe them. I'm not going to hear their reasons as excuses, but the realities. And it's going to be up to them. And I was it wasn't easy, but I was trying to be so authentic in that choice that I made that I felt it opened a real, authentic conversation with them, because they want to tell me sometimes what I wanted to hear. Right? So they thought, she wants to have a real reason, not that I just don't feel like it. I just cannot get myself up in front of a computer. And when I just decided to really, truly hear them and assume that they were their realities and not excuse them and to believe them, then I opened an authentic conversation. And we really tackle huge problems of depression, huge problems of overloading work from all the other classes, huge problems of having 20 different tools, real problems. And sometimes if we let them, they will come back. I'm not saying that they're angels. I'm not saying that some of them are going to say like, because I thought that you were never going to catch me. But I think when we really have that positive language, we open that authenticity with them and they feel heard and they feel respected. And in my experience, and I'm telling you from my heart, I think that has been the most success I have had in my class is to build this connection with my students so they don't feel they need to lie to me. They feel like I can understand, that I'm going to be reasonable, that I do have high expectations, that I do expect them to do their work, but I'm going to listen. I'm not perfect. They're not perfect.
And they know that. They know who the teachers are who listen to them. They know which teachers actually genuinely want to build a connection with them. So it might be that maybe because I'm going to be honest with you, my first years, I always wanted to teach Spanish. I mean, that's honestly what I want to do. But my first years, I was unintentional with my relationships. I did not understand the power of those relationships with the students. So therefore, I was not doing things to make sure I got to know them and to make sure that I got to know them as people before they actually were ready to learn anything from me. So that is definitely something that it's worth noting, because like you said, it allows us to see into their lives, and maybe there's a need that needs to be met.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is really important that. And the last one, and we're going to give you examples of this, and this is a hard one. This is something that I have to practice with my own children. Focus on the action, not on the person. I need to focus on this with my husband too.
You and me both, Claudia.
This is a real one, and this was shared by Tang Hein when he came to my group to talk about social emotional learning in our world language classes. And this is was so powerful. And he talked about this when we provide feedback, focusing on the actions and not in the person. And he gave us these sentence friends, right? Because we all need sentence friends. And he said, when you student action, it result of student action. Or if you want to achieve this goal, you can, we provide a strategy. Oh, I noticed that you, student action, this makes the result. I love this. I mean, I think
we need to have it on a cheat sheet, you know, and like print it, laminate it, so that when we're going to have that conversation with that student, we can go, you know, pull it and read it and frame our sentence the way we want it to restore that relationship.
I know, and I'm thinking this is any relationship that we have, right? Because as we have talked here, our world language classes have the incredible gift that is around human connection. Language is human connection. Language is used to communicate, and you communicate with the people that you love, that you like, that you're interested, that you admire, that you have something in common that you want to know about. So this is very powerful in all our relationships. These are sentence frames. I love it. I feel like, yeah, I need this. And these are some examples that we put together for you. Like when you use an online translator, it doesn't let me see what you can do with the language. Isn't that so much better? Like, you know, you are a liar.
You're lazy.
You're lazy. It just really help to have this positive conversation. And when we are angry and when we are upset, it's really hard to put our mind to find these words. So these are great. So the second one is if you want to describe with more details, right? Because they want that A, and that A requires the description with elaboration. So if you want to describe with more details, you can use some of these sentence starters, and then you provide the scaffold. And then you say,
if you want to integrate language that you don't know, you can research here. These are acceptable places, and this is how you should do it.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do. And you say, I noticed that you're really adding details to your description. This makes you grow in your proficiency. So these sentence frames, I love them. I think I'm gonna put them out for anything. Like, you know, when you sleep in my class, it really doesn't let you understand what I'm talking because you're sleeping. And these are so powerful. So this is what we need to have this conversation so we can keep our connection, we can keep our relationship with our students, and we really give them a choice in our classes. So I think we're finished with our little talk today, Bertha. So let's have some gifts for our audience.
Absolutely. So we promise you we're going to give you a gift if you stayed until the end. And we have, remember those beautiful sentence starters that Claudia shared with you a couple slides ago to describe pictures and to give opinions and make comparisons with images? Well, they're going to be all yours. You will have to go to tinyurl.com/revamp for output. And they will be all of yours. And you can download them and you can use them in your classroom with your students. They are in Spanish and English, and because, you know, both of us, we teach Spanish. So so that's one of the presents. And then Claudia, you want to tell them about the second present when I put the link in here?
And this is a great one. Okay, so you know that Bertha and I have been working super hard, and we put this course, Revamp Your Intermediate Course 2.0. We opened this couple of days ago, and we are going to have our registration open until tomorrow, August the 4th at midnight. This is an incredible course. This is a course for those teachers who are teaching level 2 and up and really want to embed a lot of second language acquisition principles, comprehensible input, proficiency-based principles into your intermediate level classes. These are not, this course is not like a PDF or one activity or one strategy. These are ideas, these are principles, plus tons of strategies that is going to help you with understanding your intermediate learners, what is the proficiency, what is the proficiency that they have, so you can help them level up. How can you be comprehensible? How can you stay comprehensible even though you need to talk about these big topics that are included in the AP or IB curriculum or your level 3 curriculum or even your level 2? How can you support and scaffold when they're outputting? And finally, how can you assess? We also added an entire unit of the graffiti unit that Bertha and I taught, and tons of bonuses, like an incredible video with Megan Bott talking about grading with proficiency, an incredible video with our friend Christina Margiori, sharing strategies to keep our students in the second language, in the target language, for in class and face-to-face, and online. Tons of incredible videos. And
so those are all the bonuses. And we're also, if you decide to register for a course, which again, the registration's open until tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. But if you decide to join us in this adventure, we are going to have a special Facebook group just for this course. And we are going to have two, right, Claudia? Mm-hmm. 2 Facebook Live sessions in 1 month to support you and to address any questions and to help you find any additional connections that you might need so that you can understand the content. So this is the course, and I keep saying this, that Claudia, when we build it, Claudia and I build it in a way that what would we wish we would have known years ago when we started on our acquisition-driven journey with integrating comprehensible input in our classes. What is it that we need? So we came up with what we needed to know and what is key to our class, and we put it in a course for intermediate students. So if you teach Spanish 2, Spanish 3 for AP, this course really goes into detail for what the proficiency level of all those students is and how that will impact your instruction. And like Claudia said, it is completely self-paced, and you will learn a lot of strategies that can be used both in online instruction, because a lot of it can be adapted online. And the principles are going to, those, apply to online and to back at school. And the activities, we have over tens of activities that we have shown you how to carry out inside the classes. And we're going to add another video, Claudia, right, on digital learning?
Yeah, so I had a lot of questions about how to make yourself comprehensible when you are providing your input, and I love to use a virtual background, so I'm going to be adding in the next week. And if you already have, because I think we have all new some of our new students in this session, so if you already purchased the course, you will have access to the course on Wednesday, starting at 1 a.m. As soon as it's August the 4th midnight, and the next minute is gonna be all available. And our first Facebook Live session for that community is gonna be August the 6th. That means this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And that's going to be the kickoff party, where we just kind of like introduce you, show you where everything is, tell you like some strategies for you to really get the best out of the course. And then we're going to have 2 more Facebook Live sessions. Thank you, Mary. Mary was one of our founding members, and we love her. She has been such a great student, and she has always been sharing everything that we have learned. And I think it has been a journey together, and that's something that Bertha and I wanted to do. And that's why we open a Facebook community for that course, even if it's a self-pay. So that means that if you don't have the time right now and you want to just get it there, and then maybe in a month you are going to start the course, it's okay. But we wanted to have a space where you can keep asking questions, and then we can provide that support for you. So if you are still here, after we finish this, we will see who is at the end of the session, and we are going to do a raffle, and we are going to give one course away.
And we will announce it in the Facebook group, who was the winner for tonight's session. So if you stayed until the end, make sure you comment right now with something so that we know you stay all the way until the end when we do our drawing. So just like Anne-Marie just said, great, mil gracias. It doesn't matter how little it is, just make sure you comment until the end so we know you're here and you could be maybe one of the winners of the courses tonight. So thank you so much for being here with us, guys. Staying an hour and 10 minutes, going on the 11th minute. It's a pleasure to be here and have these conversations with you, with Claudia. Thank you so much, Claudia, for joining me here. And you know, I mean, it's always a pleasure to learn from you. And yes, Claudia and I are going to go ahead and say goodbye, and then we're going to have a little chat, and then we're going to go ahead and do our drawing, and we will make sure that we let you know who was the winner tonight. So stay tuned inside my community and inside Claudia's community, that will make a big post about it. Have a great one.
Bye. Thank you.